Coming up, Tzu Chi's first disaster survey and medical team returned from Nepal to Taiwan with many touching tales to share. And we meet Dr. Li Yuxiang, an obstetrician at the Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital, who has delivered nearly 20,000 babies. Welcome to DaAi Headlines. I'm Mary Lee. Thank you for joining us. It has been nearly 2 weeks since a massive earthquake hit Nepal. In the immediate aftermath, Tzu Chi formed and sent a disaster survey and medical team to the country to help in any way they can. Throughout the journey, the team overcame many obstacles, including language and cultural differences, and water and electricity shortages. On May 6th, the team returned to Taiwan safely from Nepal. And though they have returned, their hearts remain with the survivors in Nepal. Receiving flowers and hugs upon returning to Taiwan, the first Tzu Chi disaster survey and medical team spent the last 10 days in Nepal, helping out with medical relief.
From a numbers perspective, if you are purely looking at what medical help we provided in Nepal, we helped over 1,500 patients. However, in truth, we comforted many more patients than that.
Upon arrival in Nepal, the medical team came across many obstacles, the first being unable to practice without a license. Thankfully, the local government quickly issued temporary medical licenses for the doctors.
There is much to be done medically on the front lines after an earthquake or other types of disasters. If patients who suffer from bone fractures or trauma can receive immediate help, then the survival rate is greater.
Tzu Chi volunteers also provided humanitarian aid for the survivors, which included hot meals for 6,150 people, 70 large tents suitable for 2,800 people to live in, casual work programs for 167 people, 500 plastic tarps and canvases, and 10 sets of solar lighting systems. The aid distributions were to give residents a sense of hope during such uncertain times.
The most difficult part of this mission was clearing customs. You can imagine the traffic of it all, with relief supplies coming in from all over the globe. We were lucky that our items arrived immediately. We also purchased many items locally to help stimulate the local economy.
Although the first team has returned to Taiwan, the love and care of Tzu Chi have yet to cease, as volunteers from 8 countries have converged in Nepal to continue to help quake survivors get through the difficult times ahead. In the wake of the massive earthquake that hit Nepal, medical assistance became a most pressing need, as hundreds of thousands of injuries, light and heavy, were left untreated. Knowing there were survivors in need in Nepal, Tzu Chi's doctors set out immediately.
Healthcare is without borders. When they needed help with bone fractures or other medical emergencies, we were there alongside them in the operating room. This assistance from Taiwan is something that will stay with them.
The 4 doctors from Taiwan put their expertise to good use as they treated patients with a variety of injuries. However, in the face of bone fractures, they needed some assistance.
They didn't have any orthopedic equipment, so I sent X-ray pictures back to Taiwan with my phone, telling them to bring the necessary equipment and whatever else they can think of that we might need here.
The doctors also conducted free clinics in more remote areas and found that as they cleaned up their surroundings, the survivors continued to sustain accidental injuries.
Actually, fallen tiles or rocks can hurt people as well. We closed up their wounds and gave them medication and told them we would come back the next day to check on them.
Local nursing students joined the Tzu Chi doctors in the free clinics, and during their time together, a new friendship was formed.
I introduced Tzu Chi to them and gave them each a card with a Jinsi aphorism on it. They were very happy to have received the gift and very interested in what the aphorisms had to say.
Though the 4 doctors have returned to Taiwan, their hearts remain in Nepal with the survivors. The baton of love and care has now been passed on to the second disaster survey and medical team, which will continue to safeguard the quake survivors' health and well-being. Also on May 6th, Tzu Chi's third disaster relief and medical team, made up of volunteers and team members from Taiwan, Singapore, and Malaysia, set out for Nepal. Among the team members is Singapore TIMA doctor Feng Baoxing, one of the earliest members of TIMA in Singapore. Over the past decade, Feng has brought his medical expertise to areas where medical resources were scarce.
If I cannot, then at least 11.
So we don't give on 11.
Having postponed his outpatient services and surgeries, Singapore TIMA member Dr. Feng Baoxing set out for Nepal on May 6th, where he will be joining the rest of Tzu Chi's third medical team.
Yeah, and we have special instruments like this, which are for plastic surgery, allow us to operate in difficult areas like inside the throat, inside the ear.
In preparation for his trip to Nepal, Feng packed some basic medical instruments which will come in handy. A plastic surgeon with a wealth of experience, Feng often travels to poor countries to offer his medical expertise while paying for all expenses out of his own pocket.
There's one big problem for Nepal, and that's because the weather goes bad in June. Actually, our biggest worry that if we cannot get off the thing in time, which means, of course, a lot of people will suffer.
One of the earliest members of TIMA in Singapore, over the past decade, Feng has been an active participant of countless free clinics both locally and abroad, including Sri Lanka and Indonesia, among others. With his compassion and professionalism, he has helped hundreds of people in need.
As a person, it cannot be just work, earn money and living. You must actually put a little bit of time for other people and help. I tell my patients always that some people are more sick than others, so the more sick ones may need our attention more than they do.
Seizing this opportunity to lend his assistance to quake survivors in Nepal, despite being over 60 years of age, Feng's determination to save lives has never diminished. Arriving at the airport, in a few hours' time, Feng Baoxing will join up with the rest of his team in Nepal. Today also happens to be his birthday.
Yeah, birthday, man, it's your life. One more year, so we should use it efficiently. Yeah, I think the most important was to bring hope to the public.
Apart from TIMA volunteers from Singapore, 5 volunteers from the Tzu Chi Kuala Lumpur and Selangor chapter are also heading to Nepal to assist with the relief efforts. The delegation is made up of orthopedic surgeons, media volunteers and administrative coordinators.
Right now, we especially need orthopedic and general surgeons in Nepal. Dr. Prem Ganesh managed to take leave, and he will be heading to Nepal with the rest of our team.
Upon the volunteers' arrival at the airport, they were immediately approached by Malaysia Air ground staff, who offered to assist with their flight. Remembering how Tzu Chi extended its assistance during the MH370 incident, ground staff hope to reciprocate in kind. It is this kinship between people in times of need that will help the Nepalese rise up amid the ruins.
Among Tzu Chi's third disaster relief and medical team heading to Nepal are doctors specializing in chest medicine and infectious disease, and 4 surgeons who will continue to perform needed operations. Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital's Deputy Superintendent Zhang Yaoren, who heads the medical team, plans to work with Nepal's hospitals to ensure the team can best serve its purpose.
With hugs and words of encouragement, the staff at Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital extended their well wishes to the third Tzu Chi medical team heading to Nepal. CEO of Tzu Chi's medical mission, Dr. Lin Junlong, also offers a few words of support. The members of the medical team include Dr. Zhang Yaoren, who has much experiences in international disaster relief, Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital's Orthopedics Division Director, Dr. Huang Mengren, who will be coordinating the orthopedic surgeons, Hualien Tzu Chi Hospital's orthopedic surgeon Ye Guangting, Daling Tzu Chi Hospital's orthopedic nurse Guo Ruiming, who took part in relief work in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan, and the former superintendent of Taichung Tzu Chi Hospital and neurosurgeon Dr. Chen Ziyong. The 4 surgeons and 1 nurse will continue the work of the second medical team and follow up on patients who underwent surgery.
While some patients need emergency treatment, others have undergone surgery or received treatment. I hope we can also help these patients. We will care for untreated patients, visit the patients, and work with local volunteers.
The medical team is also bringing bone plates and bone screws for Nepal's hospitals and will continue to provide proper medical treatment for quake survivors. Also a member of the 3rd medical team, Dr. Chiu Guoliang, a chest specialist, discussed the situation in Nepal with Dalian Tzu Chi Hospital's Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Lai Junliang, before departing for Nepal.
Some of the patients have caught colds. Prepare some antibiotics.
To meet the medical needs of the quake survivors in Nepal, Dr. Chiu is making detailed plans.
Dr. Lai and I specialize in treating severe illnesses, and we should be able to help severely injured patients or patients with complications.
Another team member, Dr. Lai Junliang, signed up to join Tzu Chi's medical team upon learning of the plight in Nepal.
I signed up to go to Japan and Sichuan in aftermath of earthquakes there, but my trips were cancelled. Then I could not go and help Typhoon Haiyan survivors due to a leg injury.
In the aftermath of disasters, due to poor sanitation and water contamination, the breakout of infectious diseases is always a worry. Hence, a specialist in infectious diseases also joined the 3rd medical team.
Many quake victims are stuck in overcrowded tents, which lack ventilation. I think some might develop lung problems.
With much-needed medical supplies, these doctors and nurses are heading to quake-stricken Nepal, ready to relieve the pain and suffering of the quake victims with their expertise and love.
Hindu tradition states that the memorial service for the dead is to be held on the 12th day after their passing. DaAi TV reporters recently were granted the special privilege of observing this ritual in Nepal. We now attend a memorial service and hear from quake survivors. Here in Nepal, Hindu priests are performing a cleansing ritual as part of the funeral service held on the 12th day of passing. Those in mourning pour smoke over their body like water and receive a tika mark on their forehead. Afterwards, they are cleansed and can resume life as normal.
It's the 12th day. After we receive the tika, we can return to the temple to pray and honor the gods.
As part of the mourning process, the male family members shave their heads.
According to our Hindu tradition, on our 10th day of mourning, we shave our heads, but we don't completely shave it off. We save a small patch in remembrance.
Although 22-year-old Roshna was hurt in the earthquake, she still insisted on attending the funeral service to honor her family members.
When the earthquake happened, my sister and I were watching television. We didn't have much time to react. Luckily, my sister escaped without harm. I, however, was crushed by rocks. Thankfully, my father and brother pulled me from the debris.
Though happy to have survived the quake, Roshna cannot help but feel the pain and remorse of being alive while so many others died. Meanwhile, Uncle lost his mother that fateful day. Having just attended her funeral, he then brings the DaAi TV crew to what was formerly his home. As the unit on the 4th floor had been leveled completely, Uncle can only retrace the layout of his home from memory. Originally a plasterer, Uncle hasn't gotten any work since the disaster struck. He said he lost everything.
Really, I'm left with nothing. Thankfully, due to food donated by others, I haven't gone hungry. I'm now living with my relatives temporarily. What I want the most now is to have a home once more. My mom was buried underneath the rubble. We didn't find her body till 3 days after the quake.
Facing the future, Uncle is at a complete loss. He said he just cannot think that far ahead right now. For the moment, the only thing he can do is to take things one step at a time. Even though Taipei has the highest sewage coverage rate in all of Taiwan, this doesn't mean the city doesn't have its share of wastewater pollution. Due to the high concentration of restaurants and food stands in the city, the sewers often get clogged and contractors will have to call in to deal with the buildup. Here's more in our report.
In Taiwan, as food stands and restaurants close for the night, restaurateurs tend to pour any remaining soup right into the drain. Also, the greasy wastewater from washing dishes is also sent down the drains. This is how a typical household washes their dishes as well. But is this the right way? Lifting up the 80-kilogram manhole cover, there is no treasure underneath.
This one isn't clogged up too badly. In some places, the buildups are so thick that you can stand on top of them.
Hordes of cockroaches are just part of the sewers. All suited up, a man climbs down the hole without hesitation. The water he is stepping in is domestic wastewater mixed with human waste.
This is just like our arteries getting clogged up by fat. The water has a hard time flowing through here, so it will back up.
An air pump above ground pumps fresh air down below so personnel have an ample supply of oxygen. The crew must work hard to remove the yellowish buildup clogging up the drains. When they come out, they are always covered in mud, grease and waste matter.
Sometimes more than a dozen. Cases like this one, we typically just unclog the drain first and then come back to clean later.
In Taipei, 3 teams of cleaning crews are always standing by to deal with clogged sewers. However, the city gets some 5,000 cases a year, and 90% of the time, heavy equipment is needed to deal with the blockage. Just what exactly is clogging up the sewers?
Grease is what's clogging up our sewers.
Grease is oily and therefore will float above water. This is why it'll clog up the drains because you just can't flush it out.
When we rinse our dishes with water, the grease does not disappear. Instead, layers of it begin to build up and harden inside the drains. The Public Works Department discovered that 80% of clogged sewers can be attributed to grease buildup. The problem is especially bad in areas of the city where there are a high concentration of restaurants, such as Longjiang Road, Lingshan North Road, and Shida Road.
Though we are here today, to be honest, to properly treat this whole area will take at least 3 days to a week.
If grease is already causing so much trouble in the sewers, what happens when it is discharged right into the country's rivers?
The impact to the environment will be disastrous because grease doesn't break down easily. It will take a lot of time, a lot of water, and a lot of different microorganisms to break it down. Because grease is insoluble in water, it tends to gather together, limiting the contact area with microorganisms.
Used cooking oil and kitchen waste are both highly polluting. Every milliliter of used oil will need to be diluted by 180 liters of water in order not to pose a threat to organisms living in the water.
I'll flush it first with hot water to dilute the grease. If it's really greasy, I'll wipe it down first with a napkin.
Separating grease from wastewater is the best way to deal with clogged drains. However, this requires people to make changes in their life. If they are not willing to do so, then the government has no choice but to allocate more funds so contractors can continue to unclog the city's drains.
Today we meet Dr. Li Yuxiang, head of Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital's Obstetrics and Gynecology Department. With 40 years of practice in the field, Dr. Li has delivered nearly 20,000 babies. It is no surprise then, as Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital celebrates its 10th anniversary, the hospital has become the region's top choice for obstetrics and gynecology.
这3600，这4000，这3600，这个3800，平均的啦。对。95、97、99、104。
Here at Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital, the 4 children that surround Dr. Li Yuxiang and his wife were all delivered by Dr. Li. In Taiwan, where people are having less children, these parents of 4 children say they were put at ease by Dr. Li's professionalism and friendliness.
我真的要生了，他马上就真的就是要跑。
When I was about to give birth, Dr. Lee showed up immediately, and that really comforted me. This is why I returned to have him deliver my other children.
Dr. Lee is well experienced in this field, so through all the prenatal examinations and birthing process, we didn't feel nervous at all.
Another mother who puts her trust in Dr. Lee is Chen Yi-an. She has 5 children, all delivered by Dr. Lee. In the past 20 years, Chen has kept in touch with Dr. Lee through regular correspondence.
生越多的信任感就越增加。对啊，所以
The more I gave birth, the more trust I had in him. In the end, he became a part of my family. I often think about him. Sometimes I want to talk to him, so I'll just write him a letter.
跟他聊一聊，写写信啊。
It's because of such trust that Dr. Lee has delivered nearly 20,000 babies and become such a big name in the field of obstetrics and gynecology. The way he documents each mother and each baby in his notebooks is just another example of how much care he puts into each patient.
Look, listen, question, and feel. The 4 ways of diagnosis. You need to give your patient your full attention from the moment she walks through your door. This is how patients will naturally come to place their trust in you.